We tend to discuss gameplay mechanics and storytelling as two separate aspects, but a video game is a piece of art whose components are interconnected. Indeed, one continuously informs and transforms the other. This ever-changing tangle of diverse artistic elements and how they coexist and sublime one another is part of what makes this medium so fascinating. There have been plenty of insightful conversations on ludonarrative dissonance. This is where a game's mechanics and narrative themes clash, tugging our interpretation in opposite directions. A common example of this dissonance are the massacres that occur in many combat-based games. We are prone to ignore them because we process them as gameplay and nothing more. This is further reinforced by conscious artistic choices that mitigate the perceived violence. It's an artificial reconstruction of death, akin to children play-acting a fantasy.
Don't worry, they're just sleeping.
Ludonarrative dissonance can completely ruin a game's story. One such case is Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which talks about overgrowing a culture of violence, misguided pride and blind faith through acts of kindness, humility and self-doubt. Meanwhile, the gameplay invites us to pillage villages, attack innocent civilians and pointlessly burn down their homes, without hesitation or consequence. Anyway, my subject today is not ludonarrative dissonance, which has already been discussed at length, but rather its direct opposite, when gameplay and narration go hand in hand and synergize with each other. Ludonarrative harmony. One of the most common examples of ludonarrative harmony is the power fantasy. When an avatar feels powerful, this sentiment invigorates the player in turn.
An elegant weapon for a more civilized age. For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic.
The power fantasy is among the most familiar video game tropes. A whole genre called Musou, inspired by the Dynasty Warriors franchise, relies almost entirely on this sense of empowerment. No subtlety here, it's all about taking down hordes of enemies like a superpowered lawnmower. The opposite, which could be dubbed weakness fantasy, also exists. Sometimes, the overwhelming strength of your foes is the very essence of the narration, and the gameplay can easily amplify this notion. Okay, they have armor and weapons, but it's fine, I have rocks. These are simple examples of ludonarrative harmony, but the concept can go much deeper and affect players in unexpected and sometimes understated ways. The main theme of Final Fantasy XV is undoubtedly camaraderie. The entire game is a road trip undertaken by 4 friends whose tight bonds are integral to the story. One of the combat mechanics in this game has the brothers-in-arms perform so-called link attacks. If the character you control is standing close to a teammate when delivering a blow, the two will execute a more effective joint strike. Since it's an easy way to boost one's combat efficiency, players are encouraged to make the most of this as often as possible, and soon enough, reaching out to an ally on the battlefield becomes second nature. As a side effect, you quickly learn to always keep an eye on the position of each team member, which in turn serves as a reminder of their presence by your side. A simple gameplay mechanic alters the way you view companion characters and makes you feel the bond you share much more intensely. It may not be a conscious thought, but you internalize this habit of looking out for those characters and start caring more about them along the way. Another opus in the Final Fantasy franchise intertwines game design elements, more specifically level design, with narrative themes. Final Fantasy XIII has been widely criticized for being too linear. So much so that it felt wrong and suffocating, as if the design of the environments were a direct assault on the player's freedom. And what is the main theme of this story? It's about fate and escaping it. It deals with people who choose to fight against an overwhelming force of oppression that deprives them of all choice. They are forced to be pawns of divine creatures, and this loss of agency is reflected in the level design. Traversing these corridor-like spaces feels restrictive because it's supposed to. It's the mindset of our characters, and we are forced to share it with them. This specific example of ludonarrative harmony actually backfired. Making the player feel bad, though not devoid of artistic merits, is always a risky move. Sadly, the corridor simulation is all people talked about for a long time when discussing this game, even though I personally think it's not nearly the worst of its issues. Obtuse lore terminology and heavy-handed exposition probably held it down far more than its linearity.
When a person gets cursed by a foul sea, they become a lessee, and they get given a focus, right?
Our enemy's the Cocoon Sanctum, their dreaded SciComm, no less.
The Purge was SciComm.
SciComm's an anti-pulse task force.
Pulse and Sanctum Fal'Cie? They're all the same. She's a lessee.
What? A pulse lessee?
A Fal'Cie. Eden.
Pulse Fal'Cie and their lessee.
The Fal'Cie.
Pulse Lessee.
Got it?
What remains of Edith Finch is a Swiss Army knife of clever narrative devices, immersing us in a constellation of interconnected short stories that manage to be simultaneously mundane and oniric. All throughout, this game uses its design to give us additional subtext on the many characters' respective mental states. One case was particularly memorable to me. Louis Finch works in a fish canning factory, and his job is mind-numbing. While the player controls Louis's hands through their tedious duty, his mind wanders, and we can follow his daydreaming alongside the factory work. One stick of the controller is dedicated to navigating the reverie, while the other keeps chopping off fish heads. As the dream develops, it takes up more and more space in the frame and asks for more and more of our focus. Soon the fish cutting becomes unconscious, and the dream world takes precedence. I've done this kind of repetitive job myself, and I can attest that very quickly the brain turns off, and one becomes nothing but a machine. Sharing this mindset with the audience is possible through the unique interactivity that the gaming medium allows. This is what ludonarrative harmony is all about. I have one last example to share, and it's probably the one I found the most effective. In Stars and Time tells the story of an adventurer whose party embarks on a journey to defeat an evil king and save the world. This is a very classic RPG setting. On the final stretch of their journey, in the last dungeon leading up to their nemesis, the group's rogue, Cypherin, dies to a hidden trap. He wakes up to soon find out that he's stuck in a time loop. Whenever he dies, the same day repeats. Time loop stories are almost a genre in themselves. This is nothing new, but never had I seen one delve this deep into what exactly this ordeal could do to someone's psyche. I don't want to elaborate on this too much, because I think it's an experience worth having without spoilers. However, the looping and repetition the player endures along with Cypherin wreak havoc on his mental health and fundamentally shift his perception of the world around him, as well as his relationship to his closest friends. In Stars and Time is a brilliant metatextual tale that uses ludonarrative harmony from start to finish to deliver a very moving depiction of avoidant personality disorder. These are just a few examples of how game design can directly affect, in subtle and conscious manners, the way we internalize a narrative. It usually aims to make us feel raw emotions, through subtext and mechanical experiences. These feelings will then downright influence our interpretation of the story. Video games have their own language, much like cinema or any other artistic medium. And because that language is inherently interactive, it exerts a far stronger grip on our emotional state than any other art form. When game design and narrative themes merge and convey the same message, the resulting experience hits us intimately. This is the beauty of ludonarrative harmony.
Pulse Falsey and Lassie are bad news. That's why Cocoon kicked them out. Live too close to the Falsey, one-way ticket to Pulse. That's the Purge in a nutshell.
It makes sense!